You're listening to The Good Morning Show with Oliver O.T. Thomas.
We're back. Welcome back to The Good Morning Show, WBOK 1230 a.m.
What New Orleans is talking about.
What New Orleans is talking about, and what New Orleans is talking about, man, from D.C. to our levee. There's a whole lot going on this morning, man. We got a great show. We're going to talk to Mr. Jerome Boykin, president of the NAACP, and his friend, Mr. Donald Rouse, co-owner and founder of Rouse's Supermarket. At 8 o'clock, we'll have a conversation with the director of the Mayor's Department of Youth and Families, Miss Emily Wolf. And at 9, pastor, teacher, business owner of Angel Arms, LLC, Mr. Isaiah Stewart, gun safety and education, especially for the African community. But right now, welcome to the Good Morning Show, Mr. Donald Rouse and Mr. President, Terrebonne NAACP, Jerome Boykin. Guys, welcome to the Good Morning Show.
Well, good morning,
and good to be here.
Yeah, good morning, and good to talk with y'all again, and thank you for allowing me to speak with y'all.
Well, thank you for your interest and your willingness, especially because the African American community felt so offended that your willingness and agreement to come and talk, especially to our listening audience here, and African American folk and folk throughout this region. I'll start though with Mr. Boykin as president of NAACP. You were one of the first people when this controversy started for Mr. Rouse and his supermarket. You were one of the first people to say, that's not the Donald Rouse I know. Well, why, Mr. President Boykin?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Oliver Thomas. When situations like this happen with anyone, the first thing you want to look at is a guy's record. This incident happened back on January the 6th of this year. But if you look at Mr. Rouse's record for the last 20 years that I've had a relationship with for the past 20 years, I want our listening audience to know that Mr. Rouse is a member of the NAACP. For over 20 years, Mr. Rouse has been giving scholarships to African-American kids in our community. I wanted people to know that Mr. Rouse has received one of the highest awards from the NAACP for his work in the community. So I think when controversial things like this come up, I think you need to take a step back and look at a guy's record and see what have he done in our community before this incident have come up. And I think it's clear that Mr. Rouse have given back to all communities, including the African-American community. He have hired African-American managers in his stores. If you judge him by other supermarkets around New Orleans and around the state of Louisiana, take a look at African-Americans in their stores compared to African-Americans in his stores. Mr. Rouse have always wanted African-Americans to come forward who are vendors. He have included African-American vendors in his stores. Now, I must say I didn't agree with Mr. Rouse going to Washington, D.C. to a rally. But the information that I got at first that Mr. Rouse was involved in the riot at the Capitol, in which I found out that was not true. And I want to repeat it. He was not at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. rioting. For the most part of it, the guy that I know, Donald Rouse, for over 20 years, in my opinion, I believe he went because he was nosy. I believe he wanted to see the president. I believe he wanted to see what was going on. But I can actually come on your radio show and say that this guy have given back to the African-American community. Also, I want to say he have given to Republican candidates running for office, and he have also given to Democratic candidates running for office. He have given money to our now governor, Governor Edwards. He have given money to African-American candidates who are running for office. There was recently an African-American running for city marshal in Thibodeau. Mr. Rouse has supported this African-American candidate. Mr. Cook, who won, who became the first African-American city marshal in Thibodeau, Louisiana. I spoke to Calvin Cook, and he said without the Rouse's support, he would have won his election. So I just want the community to know who this guy truly is. And like I said earlier, Oliver, you have to judge a guy by what have he done before this incident. Because many times these guys come in our community, and when they have done something, then they want to join the NAACP. Then they want to try to start doing this in the community. Then they want to try to start doing that to want to be our friend. I can honestly come on your show
Thank you.
and say that Donald Rouse Sr. have been a friend of this community, including the African-American community.
Thank you. Mr. Boykin, but the first question before I turn this over to Prof, this is Mr. Rouse. Then why were you there?
Thank you. Before I get to that, a couple of things I'd like to say. First off, I'd like to correct something that's on social media and so forth. I am not CEO of Rouse's. I have been retired for 4 years. My son, Donald Rouse Jr., Donnie, is CEO. Mr. Steve Black is president of Rouse's. Allie, my niece, is a co-owner and controller of Rouse's. The company is owned by the Rouse family, of which I am one. There are 12 of us. And I'll be happy to discuss exactly what I did and didn't do on my trip to Washington. However, first thing I would like to do is to apologize to Rouse's customers, the community as a whole, my son and Rouse's president, Steve Black, my family, and most importantly to me, Rouse's team members who in New Orleans are majority African Americans. All of these people are innocent, but they are paying the price for my poor judgment, and that hurts me terribly. And for that, I am very sorry. Matter of fact, my son asked me not to go. But sometimes we don't listen to our sons, and maybe now I should. I'm getting a little older, and maybe my judgment is not what it was at one time. But back to your question.
Yes.
What was
why were you there?
I went there because I thought it was going to be an historical time in the making. The Electoral College was going to be confirmed. The president was going to make his last speech, which I had never been to one of his speeches, and I thought I'd go, and here I had an opportunity to go. So I went, and that's why I went. I didn't even understand what insurrection meant until recently. I had not heard of any uprising or anything like that. I'm not a part of that. I went for the reasons I just told you. I stayed for about 3/4 of his speech. He was saying the same thing that he's been saying over and over. I told Steve, I said, I'm cold. Let's go back to the hotel. And that's what I did. Went back to the hotel. It was about 12:30, 1 o'clock. Had lunch, took a nap, got up, turned on the TV, and that's when I saw the mess that these idiots were causing in the Capitol. I stayed in the hotel because I didn't feel safe. I knew that on the news they announced a 6 o'clock curfew. So at about 5 or 5:30, out of curiosity, I wanted to see what was going on in the streets. So I went out and made one block around the hotel, and there was nobody on the street. It was eerie. Matter of fact, in Washington, everything was closed because of the virus. You couldn't even get a cup of coffee on the street. But if the picture that has been going around on social media, if you look at it, you don't see a Trump hat on me. You don't see a Trump shirt on me, but you do see a mask on me. And a lot of people in this group, there were 99%, didn't have masks. Matter of fact, they looked at me like I was a little strange, and one comment from one person said, "Hey, old man, that mask isn't going to do you any good." I mean, so I felt a little bit out of place, but I was there, and I accept responsibility for being there. I just feel very bad for our team members who are being harmed by my poor judgment.
Before Prof asks you a question and makes a statement, Reverend Boykin thought enough of, President Boykin, President NAACP, thought enough of you to be here to talk to you, to call people and talk about his relationship with you. But that picture with the mask, as it relates to the African American people, though you had on a mask, many thought that picture unmasked you. in terms of how you feel about black folk and poor folk in this area. So what do you say to that?
No, I say that's horrible. That's not true. Again, I can repeat what Jerome said. Look at what I've done in the past. Walk into my stores on like on Calton, and walk into Durnax or Robert's, and look at the difference in the employment as far as whites to African Americans. African Americans have been a big part of our business since I was a kid growing up. The first store near Gray, Louisiana, which was majority black African Americans. I've served African Americans and worked with African Americans all of my life. It's an insult to me to think that I would not appreciate the African American community. Now, I insulted them. I understand that by going to Washington. But let me back up one more time and say one more thing. I was listening to 99.5 and a few other stations, but I was not listening to 1230 and the 1280 a.m. I've since started because I don't find I had a good enough balance of what I was hearing. If I didn't realize that I was going to affect the African American community as horribly as I did. And I think that's because I didn't have enough balance. I was listening to, say, 99.5 and listening to, more African Americans voted for Trump than ever, more Hispanics voted for Trump than ever. So I didn't see. Now, if I'd have told Jerome I was going to Washington, I probably would have listened to him, even though I didn't listen to my son.
Thank you.
But I just didn't have the right balance, I don't think. Oh. And I have since begun listening to your station and a Black Information Network.
Yeah, we're here.
I can understand. Yes.
No, we're here, Mr. Rouse, and we feel way different from a whole lot of folk you've been listening to. But we're also add and we contribute and we have value. Proud.
Yeah, for me, Mr. Rouse, it's not necessarily a black-white issue. For me, it became an issue of being an American. And many of the individuals that traveled to D.C. in support of President Trump were there to stop the steal. They had become radicalized. And so my question to you, Mr. Rouse, is this, because I am a Rouse shopper. I respect your brand. And in New Orleans...
On pause.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. In New Orleans, our family name means something. Sometimes something good, sometimes something not so good. But our family name can either be our greatest asset or our worst liability. And I think we all would agree that the Rouse name over the years has become synonymous with a brand that is second to none. It's a symbol of what is right with America. The family, it's a family-owned business. It provides minority jobs. He's correct, right? And a great product, clean stores in our community. So my question for you is this, Mr. Rouse. You have built a brand. The Rouse family has built a brand. Why associate your family's name with a person in the brand that is associated with everything and everyone that many believe that represents what is so wrong with America?
Well, once again, I didn't go over there in support of Trump. I went over there to hear him speak. I went over there to be for the history being made, history in the making, I guess I would say. But I guess I had very poor judgment, not realizing what I was doing. Had I realized what I was going to be doing, I would not have gone. I absolutely would take it back right now if I could. Again, I apologize, and I'm very sorry, and I hurt a lot of people, and I understand that. As far as the brand, yeah, I ran the company for over 40 years, and we worked very hard. Our whole team worked very hard, and they still do. And that's what hurts me, that I hurt the brand, I hurt my family, and I hurt, most importantly, our team members who had nothing to do with my poor judgment.
We have one of the two owners of Equity Media on the line. They're participating. Mr. Wendell Pierce, actor, activist, owner here at Equity Media WOK. Mr. Pierce, you're on with President Jerome Boykin and Donald Rouse. Mr. Pierce.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. Rouse.
Good morning.
Good morning,
I
sir.
have two questions for you, Mr. Rouse. The first is, do you believe the election was stolen? And the second question
No, sir.
is, before you answer that, do you have an understanding of what complicity is? Complicity,
I didn't get the second
while the
question.
intent
I'm sorry.
may be different. Can you hear me?
Oliver, he's not coming in clear.
Yeah, he said, does he understand complicity?
Do you understand?
Being complicit.
Which is,
I do.
no matter
I
what the
do
intent
understand.
is. Can you hear me now?
I'm sorry.
No matter what the intent is, the impact is always greater than whatever the intent may be. If I drove someone to one of the Rouse's stores and they got out and they went in the store and robbed it, got back in the car and we got home, and then they said, guess what I did? I robbed Rouse's. If I don't say anything to law enforcement then, or I don't publicly say I denounce this, I am complicit. Not only am I complicit by law, I'm an accessory. I'm an accessory. It's the fact that you did not react to what was happening that made it appear to me, as an American, I agree with Professor, the offense was to me as an American. The minute that you were aware that insurrection was happening, whether you knew it or not before, you needed to disclaim it. And that didn't happen. That didn't happen. And what people are reacting to, and I'm reacting to, is the evidence of your complicity. And that was the thing that was offensive to me. So do you understand how you are complicit in the insurrection? And did you believe that this election was stolen?
Mr. Rouse.
No, sir. I do not believe the election was stolen. I believe Trump was wrong. I believe all of that was coming out of there was incorrect. As far as being complicit, I would have needed to know ahead of time that what was going to take place. I absolutely had no idea. I absolutely got out of Washington as quick as I could after. Have I waited too long to speak? Probably so, but certain consultants advised me to let it cool down before I began to make a push and apologize, and perhaps that's bad advice. But I was paying the man for advice, and I accepted it. Now Jerome, on the other hand, said, You've got to get out. You've got to get out there and talk to the African American community. And that's why I'm on the station today.
Well, one more, President Boykin, quick response, and then Mr. Troy Henry, the other principal of Equity Media. Mr. Boykin, your response.
Yes, like I say, in all honesty, I've had a relationship with Mr. Rouse for over 20 years. I consider him a good friend. Sometimes me and my friends fight. Sometimes me and my friends argue. I mean, Donald's no different. When I heard about it, matter of fact, he told me that, he was told, these guys got consulted and other people who give him advice. But as a true friend of Donald Rouse, I contacted him and I told him, I said, you're going to have to speak to the African-American community. You're going to have to meet with black elected officials. I know you're sorry that this happened, but you need to take my advice, and I advise you this is what you need to do. And I said the most important thing, I know what you're going to do is you're going to be honest. So that's what you need to do. And that's what friends does. I mean, we all are human. We all make mistakes. But like I say, I judge a guy by how he is before an incident, because if you judge a guy about the type of person and character that he is before something happens, you have a chance on getting a good feel for the individual. And that's the reason why, I say, based on my relationship with Mr. Rouse, and I can tell you,
I was one of the first ones. We had a protest at one of his stores in Homer. Guess who was there? Jerome Boykin.
Thank you, Mr. Boykin. Mr.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so what I'm saying to you is, I know the guy hard.
Yeah.
I didn't agree with what he did. I told him that I didn't agree with what he did, but for him to come on this show and say what he is saying from his heart,
okay.
The guy is sincere in what he's saying.
All right.
Now, going forward, we have some other things we want to talk about.
No. We want to get to what's next, but absolutely. We're going to let Mr. Pierce make one more comment, then Troy Henry.
Feel he's complicit. All right.
Yeah, I think he said he thought he wasn't complicit, but if you want to respond to that again, Mr. Rouse, you can. Mr. Henry.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mr. Rouse, for coming on the WBOK and taking the time to address this issue. I really
Thank you
have
for allowing me to be on here.
Two things I just wanted to kind of quickly address with you because I know we got other callers. One is that when you go to an event, and I'm not talking about this insurrection, I'm talking about the rally, and there are Confederate flags, people in hoods, Klans hoods. There are QAnon people there. There are Nazi people there, and all of these different people that are just hate-filled people. Why in the world would anybody stick around that kind of environment if they don't feel some level of affinity to the mission and the cause that they're all there on behalf of? That's kind of one.
Are you speaking of the speech that I went to?
Yes.
You're asking me,
which is where
exactly
they were waving
why would I
flags,
hang around
Nazi
those
flags,
people
and Confederate flags, et cetera,
Sir,
et cetera. Yes.
There was not a Confederate flag anywhere where I was. There was nobody in hoods. Absolutely, I get what you're saying, and I would have got out of there because I wouldn't want to be around that type of behavior. Yeah, I saw none of that where I was.
Okay.
I was on the street, matter of fact, between the Washington Monument and the White House. And there was a big area that was fenced off, and people had tickets, and they went in. I didn't have a ticket, so I stayed on the street. There was a big screen. I could hear them. I could see them on the big screen. And I saw none of what you just mentioned. And I hope I don't offend anybody. I'm not saying it wasn't there, but I didn't see any of that where I was. And looking forward, all I saw was Trump flags and American flags.
We are talking to Mr. Donald Rouse, founder, former co-owner of Rouse's Supermarket chain, one of the most successful chains, and Terrebonne Parish President, NAACP branch, Jerome Boykin. Go ahead, Wendell.
And my second question is, listen, we're a black media company. We have come to realize that Rouse's does not support any black-owned media companies like WBOK, like the Data News,
Tribune.
like Tribunes, or what have you, which is very disingenuous and concerns us because a large portion of your employees, as well as a large portion of your customers, right, are African-American, but you do have a pattern of not supporting African-American media institutions at a minimum. I can't speak for other businesses as well. I would hope that you would use this as an opportunity to affirmatively really become part of the solution as opposed to part of the problem in the African-American community by supporting our owned institutions. Thank you for your time. Thanks for coming on, and I'll give it back to Oliver. I'd love to hear your answer to that.
Thank you very much, sir. And I can answer it this way. I'm sure the president of our company and my son, Donnie, who is CEO, just heard what you said, and I'm sure it caught their attention. I'm not in control of the company anymore, but I know they're listening, and I'm sure that they hear you and they get it.
So let's
also say I begin personally listening to these stations to have a better balance. I didn't listen to them before. I don't even know if I realized that they were that popular or what have you. But I'm enjoying the views that I'm hearing. I sincerely am, and it's given me a much better balance in my life. And I'll continue.
Well, we're here.
I'm sure Donnie heard you.
Right.
But let me also say there are many Black-owned businesses and vendors that we support. Some of them we even started. There's a pickle company from Houma, which we put their product in all of our stores. That's what made them successful. Jerome might know who I'm talking about.
Right.
But, I mean, on and on. There's a number of chefs and black vendors that we support.
And Mr. Rouse, we're going to segue to that because State Representative Jason Hughes and Royce Duplessis, two people, both state representatives I've been in conversations with the last couple of days. And they're both in union wanting to know what's next.
Sure.
In moving past this, once the apology tour, once you're done, you said you're sorry. So what's next? There's Food Desert, New Orleans East. I know you're in conversations with Councilmember Byron Lee about a food desert and his part of his district on the West Bank. We know that moving forward, your son and the president of the company have opportunities not only to do business with Black-owned media, but to develop partnerships, man, and especially in communities that are starved for the kind of products that you have. So with this, and we also know that you formed a committee. Tell us what the committee is looking at to move beyond not just the investment in an apology, but the investment that can enumerate in our community in terms of opportunity.
Sure. And Mr. Duplessis, Representative Duplessis, wrote me a great letter. It laid it out very well for me, and he really caught my attention and made me think, and I appreciate that, and I'll be happy to work with him in the future because I know he can help the community. Yes, the company, under Donnie's leadership, has formed a community committee, which we've never had before. They had planned it for some time, but I guess this kind of sped it up. And on that committee, by the way, is a majority African American. I think that'll help the company understand more of our community needs and the thoughts from the community, and represent perhaps better our company to our team members that are African American as well. And I imagine if we had that committee beforehand and they had expressed concern about me going, well, I'm sure I wouldn't have gone. But I'm excited of what they're doing and look forward to them, Donnie and Steve, back in the future.
Professor.
Yeah, I think this is it's not for me. Once again, I reiterate, it's an American issue. That anyone believed that the vote was stolen, that the process had not played out, that it had been challenged over 90 times in federal and state court, that it had been validated by the United States Supreme Court. It's an American issue. And so I think that if you went to that rally, you have to be repatriated, that you have to come back to the light. And so one of the things that we're concerned about in boycotting your stores is that African Americans are going to lose jobs, and we're concerned about that. But nevertheless, some people say that, well, they have jobs, but the slaves on plantations had jobs. But do they have a livable wage where they can buy houses, where they can raise families?
Benefits.
And benefits, health care. Those are things that we're interested in.
Is
that part of what the committee is taking a look at?
Are you taking a look at that?
Well, I'm sure that the committee will have access to that type of information that'll be shared with them. I'm not on the committee. I'm not involved in it in any way, but I would think, knowing the company, that they would be involved with some of that. Now, as far as being American, I'm as American as it gets. I'll always and have always supported our commander-in-chief. Once the election's over, that's our president, whether I voted for him or not. And just like Joe Biden is president, I'm going to support him. I want him to be successful. It'd be foolish for me for him to hope that he's not successful. That wouldn't be good for anybody. So I'll support Joe Biden for as long as he's president, for certain.
We're having our conversation. Matter of fact,
that's very simple for me.
Yeah, today we're talking to Mr. Don Rouse, one of the founders and co-owners of Rouse's supermarket chain, and president of NAACP Terrebonne branch, Mr. Jerome Boykins. Before, Prof, any other questions you have before Mr. Boykins close it and makes his comment, and we allow Mr. Rouse?
No, I just think, once again, I just want to reiterate that this is America. This is our America. that African Americans are a part of America. We built America. And I think that everybody has to respect what happened January 6th was an attack on democracy. And so we have to respect the processes. The Constitution takes precedent over the individual. It says we the people and not me the people. And I need y'all to get that.
Closing comment.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, closing comment, Mr. Boykin, and then we'll allow Mr. Rouse.
No, I just want to say, with Mr. Donald Rouse coming on the show this morning, clearly shows his character. I mean, the easiest thing for him to do is say, no, I don't want to come on, and just let the PR guys do their job and let his son do his job. But it shows his character. It shows the type of person that he is. And like I say, I wouldn't have come on your show if I felt that Mr. Rouse wasn't sincere in what he is saying, and about what he want to do, and about his past history in the African American community. Is that room for Mr. Rouse and the Rouse family to do a little more than what they have done? I would always say yes. There's always room for them to do more. But let's not forget the things that they have done in our community. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because I know this guy is going to do everything that he can to help the African American community. Why I think that? His record proves that. Now, the only thing he needs to do is to improve some of the things that he have already started doing.
I hear you, Mr. President, but if it's the baby who dirtied the water, you may want to take both of them out. Mr. Rouse, first of all, thank you for appearing on the show. Thank you for respecting Equity Media and WBOK enough to come and lend your voice. Mr. President Boykin, thank you for
thank you, man. I appreciate
helping facilitate this. In your closing comment, moving forward, how has it made you different? And the enlightenment and change in the miseducation of Donald Rouse moving forward. What have you learned from this?
I learned that I did not have the right balance of information. I've begun to address that by listening to this station, and I'm sure that my son heard the comment earlier. I think it was from Mr. Pierce. I again want to reiterate that I love our team members, and I'm very sorry for what the hardship I've caused on them. I'll do everything and anything I can to improve conditions for them and to just be a better person for everybody.
First of all, thank you. And
I've always served African Americans, so it's really a sad day for me for my bad judgment.
President Boykin, thank you for sharing it with us. Donald Rouse, thank you. State Representative Jason Hughes, thank you for your comments and contributions, as well as Royce Duplessis and his letter. We look forward to the future. We look forward to when the committee releases its report on how better to move forward and build on and enriching both financially in terms of social support in our community. You guys promise to come back, or have a Rouse representative come back and talk about its findings from the new committee?
Absolutely. I enjoyed this 100%. One more thing when you talk about supporting the community. Last year alone, we donated $500,000 to the local food banks. I mean, that's supporting everybody. It's not supporting one group.
Well, there are several food deserts in African American communities throughout this region. A blessing would be to see a grocery chain that has a rich history and good product in those deserts. So we'll stay tuned, we'll stay involved, and we'll keep watch over the evolution, not just of you, Donald Rouse, but the evolution of the Rouse supermarket chain. Look forward to that committee's finding being released right here on WBOK. God bless you and your family. Stay safe, President Boykin. God bless you and the Terrebonne branch of the NAACP. And let's keep fighting for justice. Thank you. Thank you very much. When we come back,
God bless y'all.
God bless you. When we come back, we're going to talk to Miss Emily Wolf We got a couple of crises out there, man. Attacks on democracy, as well as what do we do with our children? Emily Wolf, when we come back after the break.